So David, you've made films on important cultural legacies and films on the environment. What brought you to turtles?
Well, I was always a nature boy growing up. The only problem was I was living in the big city. And so if I wanted to partake of the wildlife, I just opened my window on my sixth floor apartment. And there I could hear the wildlife, which was honking horns and sirens and jack brakes from tractor trailers. But that was kind of the extent of what wildlife was until I turned 7. And then my parents took us to the mountains, to the country, and that was Adirondack Mountains. And so from after breakfast, we just ran into the woods. And I remember coming upon this frog pond of green frogs and leopard frogs and bullfrogs, and it was just boy heaven. And so anything that slithered or crawled or hopped was fair game. And it was like dying and going to heaven. And turtles were also a big part of my childhood. I remember I had a box turtle as a child. His name was Spike. And the most notable thing I remember is that he got lost for months. He just kind of disappeared. I don't know if someone snuck in the key or something, but we found him about 2-3 months later in the dust bunnies under my bed, and he was still alive. But fast forward 40 plus years, and I reconnected with turtles just a few years ago when me and my wife were celebrating our anniversary off the coast of Charleston in this little island. And the next morning when we got there, my wife woke up early and she noticed all these people were hanging on the beach with these fluorescent t-shirts, all the same colors. And we ran out on the beach to find out what was going on. Were they digging up a body or burying a body? And it turned out when we got there, they had just excavated a loggerhead turtle nest. And they opened it up, and 95 baby loggerhead turtles came out of this nest and running in all directions because they didn't have any cues because it was daylight to know which way to go. And so anyone who was on the beach was told to put their foot out and sort of guide them to the ocean. And I was just smitten by that, to see these little baby turtles, to watch the hundreds of people who gathered to watch all of this. And I was just amazed by all that. And so that kind of sparked my imagination. And so I said, I started to do some research. I contacted turtle experts around the country. I started contacting some native tribes from around the world, sea turtle patrols, archaeologists, and it was just fascinating to hear that the power of turtles over man is something that goes back since the dawn of man himself. And so I thought, what a fascinating way to be able to tell the story of conservation, not from the perspective of pain and guilt and all the bad times when we have been less than stellar stewards, but how about turtles being the canvas for telling the story about who we are and our connection to nature through the grid of turtles. And so that's where it all began.
So why do you think turtles have played such an important role in human culture?
Well, I think we're a curious species, and so for thousands of years we've been watching this creature come on the beach. And I mean, first you see this thing, the shell on its body. I mean, that immediately sets it apart from anything else that you've ever seen. And then we see this creature come onto the beach. It has no legs, it has no feet. It sometimes has to crawl hundreds of yards on the beach. It'll take hours sometimes to build a nest, releasing sometimes hundreds of eggs. The mystery of this creature then going back from the land to the ocean and to disappear for years at a time, I think when cultures saw this, it just invoked a powerful emotion in them. And I think as a result of that, it inspired turtles being a totem, being this spiritual guide to some extent. And so you see this mystery blossoming in cultures where for thousands of years leatherback sea turtles have been considered a deity, an ancestor to some cultures. The Hindus look at sea turtles and they see it as their savior. The second incarnation of Vishnu was a turtle. The Chinese look at turtles and they see how fecundant they are, how many eggs that they lay, and they look at turtles as the symbol of fertility. So I think hundreds, if not thousands, of cultures all around the world have seen this mysterious creature, and it just invoked something powerful in them. And I think to some extent, nature is a mirror for ourselves. We see the fascinating attributes of nature. It inspires us in many different ways, and I think that's probably what happened with cultures throughout the world, and how it continues to inspire us today. How many people you see walking around with turtle necklaces or turtle bracelets or turtle cartoons or Finding Nemo. It's a pervasive, powerful thing, and I think that's where it all came from.
So scientists often describe animals like turtles by their taxa classification, things like the size of their brains. Why are these classifications less meaningful when we try to understand man's long-term relationship with them?
Science, by its very nature, is a reductionist modality. When scientists are exploring a species, a creature, a plant, you break it down into its parts. You look for similarities, you look for contrasts, you track them, you study their reproductive processes, where they forage, what their life cycle is, their evolutionary adaptations. Science has done a wonderful job of helping us understand the life and world around us. But I think science falls short, not because it's a shortcoming of science, but it's just the nature of science, is that if we want to understand why we're passionate about nature, what invokes us in this powerful way, why when we walk in the woods or go to the beach, swim in the water or hike a mountain, why we feel enraptured in that way. I don't think science can explain that. It can explain the endorphins that might, fire in our body. It can explain the neurochemicals, the neurochemical process, but it won't explain why. So Albert Einstein once said that one of the most beautiful things that can happen to a person is the mystery of life. And the mystery of life is the source of all art and all science. And so science provides us some definition of the world around us. But I think there's a wisdom that goes beyond science. And that can't be defined by species, by genus, by evolution. It's defined by a different kind of wisdom. Some people might call it spirituality. Some people might call it some universal connection with nature. Whatever you call it, I think you see that passion when you see native tribes that celebrate turtles. You see that passion with a child on the beach watching this little baby turtle running off to the ocean. And you see that passion in a 99-year-old lady or man who feels like they're a child again when they're in nature. So I think science tells us a part of the story, a very important part of the story. But I think there's another part of the story that still needs to be told.
So finally, what lessons do you think turtles have to teach humans?
I think turtles have a lot of lessons for us. I think, for one, the fact that a turtle has survived, the turtles have survived 150 million years, have survived every major extinction, including the dinosaurs, and they're still here, they're still prospering. That's just an amazing example of perseverance. I think that's kind of the definition of perseverance, to be able to overcome all the obstacles. You see sometimes turtles coming on shore, nesting, their part of their flipper has been bitten off. They have a swordfish spike in their body, and they continue to keep on keeping on, continuing to lay their eggs. They just overcome everything. And I think part of what I learn and many people learn is patience. Patience of a turtle. Um, it's fascinating. Um, just watching this turtle with flippers coming, a turtle lives in the ocean, and so when they're moving around, it's almost like they're weightless. But when they come on the ground, not only do they not have feet and have to move on this beach, but now you have the full weight of gravity that they have to come through. And so their ability to overcome those things is a powerful, profound lesson, I think, for a lot of us. One of my heroes growing up was Jacques Cousteau. And Jacques Cousteau opened this world to so many people of the ocean that no one ever knew of before. We got to see on our television screens these things that we thought were impossible, or just the tale of fables and folk tales and fairy tales. And one of the things that Jacques Cousteau had to say was that we only will save and protect the things that we love. And I think that if turtles become that ambassador for us, the ambassador to open our minds, and maybe even more importantly, to open our hearts to nature and to the ocean and to stewardship, to open our hearts to this web of life that we are so inextricably tied to, that turtles are so inextricably tied to. When I see a turtle coming onto the beach and laying their eggs and then going back to the ocean, as the most important steward on the planet, when I see that, not me personally being the most important steward on the planet, but as a species, I see that and I say, that mama is telling me, I'm leaving these eggs for you, that you have to be the steward. You have to protect this beach, because 20 or 30 years later, those turtles are going to come back to that same beach or to a beach nearby. Will there be a beach there? Will the oceans rise and that beach be gone? Will there be a condo, a few years later in the footsteps of where that nest was? I think there's a powerful message that turtle is teaching me, teaching all of us, that that nature is demanding of us to be the stewards that we need to be. And I think when we watch the power of these creatures like turtles, and what they've been able to overcome, and as we open our heart to respond to them, then we can be the stewards that nature needs us to be. And I think turtles can help us get there. I think lots of creatures can help us get there, but turtles are certainly one big step in that direction.